welcome back. I know it's been a while since I did a video, so apologies for that. It has been extremely busy, which is a good thing for us here at Prime in the Tanker Division, and for my regional dedicated that I do. If you haven't watched my videos before, I do drive for Prime. I've been driving for Prime for about 6.5 years. Do our Decatur, Bellevue regional dedicated. I live near the Decatur terminal. I go home basically every day. There are a handful of times throughout the year that I do have to sleep in the truck, but that is a semi-rare occasion. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I've wanted to do this video for a long time, I've talked to a bunch of people about doing this video, and I just, part of it is laziness, part of it is this is kind of a complicated video to make. But this is a more advanced version of, I think I've done one on trip planning before. And I kind of did a basic trip planning video where I went through and talked about, okay, you know, here I got my trip, my load assignment. Here's how I, you know, take a look at, typically I'll, especially if it's a location I haven't been before. Obviously, when I've been doing this for, I've been doing this out of Decatur for over 6 years. Obviously, 6.5 at Prime all told, but I go to a lot of places I've been before. This place that I'm at today, I've been here countless times. So trip planning is a little bit different when you've been somewhere before. It's more about gauging traffic at the point where you've been to a location previously. But when you have a new customer, a new place that you haven't been before, it's, you know, the first thing is, do you know where you're going? So out of Decatur, Indiana, which is where I run probably 99% of the time for a shipper, what direction is it? North, south, east, west? And then there's, you know, you have your bearing about what way you're going to leave Decatur, just to start. And first thing I typically do is I put it into Google Maps. Where am I going? I get a general idea about how far away it is. Obviously, Google Maps is set up for cars. You do not want to use Google Maps. You do not want to use a commercially available car GPS. Terrible idea. It's going to, you know, especially if there's a small section of road under construction, it may just route you, especially if it's within a city, it may make you just go around one block, which is impossible to do in a truck. So it gives you an idea, but it's by no means your only source, or should ever be your only source for trip planning. But it gives you an idea. Okay, I've never been to this place. I know it's in Ohio, so I know it's east of me, but I may need to go north out of Decatur to get to 24, US 24, which you have to go up to Fort Wayne to pick up. I may have to go south and then east out of Decatur to head over to where I'm in Ohio today. I'm in Cincinnati. You have to go south and then east on US 33, or you can take US 27 south. So basic trip planning starts with that. Then it gets into the more complicated truck route. You know, you have a general idea when you plug it into Google Maps about how long it takes. For example, when I plug this location into Google Maps, it tells me it takes 2.5 hours to get here. Everything's going to take longer in a truck. It's actually about 3 hours to get here in a truck. And again, that all depends then, is there construction? There is a detour along the route for this week and next week that's going to add 5 to 10 minutes to, no matter what way you, well, I shouldn't say no matter, it's going to add 5 to 10 minutes to your route. Is there an accident along the way? And obviously that's not something you can check the day before, but it should be something that you check before you leave. And, you know, there are various sources for that. Google Maps is still a good source for checking traffic. States have their own, you know, live traffic websites. You can just Google whatever state you're going to, look up Ohio traffic conditions. They have their own website for that. But the one thing that I wanted to get into, and it has nothing to do with where I am today, there's a place that I go fairly frequently. It's a customer they go to, but going to Chicago is kind of a unique, it's its own animal. And I grew up outside of Chicago. And for that, for a number of reasons, Chicago is, first of all, it's obviously one of the biggest cities in the country. It's top 3 city in the country in terms of population. Traffic is vastly different there than it is, you know, coming even here to Cincinnati or going through Dayton, which I have to go through to get here to Cincinnati. Cincinnati is kind of a pain right now because there is a major I-75, the bridge going to Kentucky is under construction, so that's its own separate issue until November. However, there's always construction, there's always traffic in Chicago, and then you throw tolls on top of all of that when you head to Chicago. So I wanted to touch on a couple of issues with going to Chicago and how trip planning is a little bit different, and I wanted to roll in a couple of screenshots that I have going to a customer near O'Hare Airport from Decatur, Indiana. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about was the primary road leading from Fort Wayne over to Chicago is US 30. US 30 is a 4-lane divided highway, but there are traffic lights. There are a handful of small cities where there are anywhere from, you know, 1 stoplight to Warsaw has, I don't know, upwards of 10 stoplights within the city. So that's its own animal. And then there are, you know, various stoplights along the way, just kind of in the middle of nowhere where there might be a crossroad. So it's the most direct route to get from Fort Wayne to Chicago. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always the fastest. There is an alternative, and that is to take I-69 all the way up to I-80 and drive I-80 all the way across, 80, 90, all the way across the toll road, which brings into the discussion tolls. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put over here just a Google Map screenshot of the route from Fort Wayne, and that'll be the primary route that's highlighted, from Fort Wayne on US 30 over to Valparaiso, where you can cut up to, at that point it's going to be 80, 90, 94 basically, and make another decision there. And then you can also see the alternative route going up from Fort Wayne and then over on 80, 90. So that's a decision that you have to make right off the bat when you're leaving Decatur. You're less than a half an hour away. Are you going to take 30 and deal with the traffic lights, or are you going to drive up? And you can see it's going to take a little bit longer. It's further in terms of miles. You also have to pay toll, but you're not going to have to deal with those stoplights. Stoplights, there's always occasionally accidents on US 30 because of the cross traffic. There are accidents in the winter on 80, 90. So those are the decisions that you have to make. Sometimes if you're in a time crunch, it might be worth it to take 80, 90, pay the tolls, and get over there. If you see that there's an accident, that's one of those things, checking traffic before you leave. There might be a rollover accident or something major happening on US 30 that it's not worth it to take it, because even though you know it's going to save you time, it may take an hour, 2 hours sitting in traffic behind some accident that's going to, you know, they have to call a couple of wreckers and get it cleared up. So that's the first decision that you have to make, is which one are you going to do? And so this is part of that trip planning that I wanted to talk about. Those are the types of things that you just have to make that decision based on your experience. And there is no correct answer. And there is no answer that says in this, you know, in scenario A you do this, in scenario B you do that, scenario C you do that. You just have to make a gut decision. And as you do this, the longer you do this, the easier it is to say, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm glad I did this because I avoided this slowdown on this particular road. So the next shot that I want to screenshot that I want to bring in is Chicago itself. And Chicago, anyone who has driven in Chicago, and I grew up learning to drive in Chicago, cars, not trucks, knows that, especially when you're talking north to south, really not just north to south, but north to south more so than east to west, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can get from one point to another so many different ways, and some of them cost more than others. Once you get to Valparaiso, on the east side, you have that decision to make. Are you going to stay on the toll road and use the Skyway? Skyway has significantly less traffic, but you're also going to pay between $25 and $30 each way just to use the Skyway in tolls in Illinois. That doesn't include the Indiana portion of tolls. If there is massive congestion on 8094 along the south part, or I-94 or 294, the Skyway, although it costs more money, makes sense. If there's not massive congestion, then it doesn't make any sense at all. One thing to know is I-94, going through downtown Chicago, there are no tolls whatsoever until you get up to O'Hare, which at that point you're on I-90 instead of I-94. Which sounds fantastic. Well, why wouldn't you do that every single time? No tolls? Well, you're driving through downtown Chicago, and that is one of the most congested parts of the highway system in Chicago. So the trade-off is no tolls, but you may lose an hour, depending on time of day, whatnot, driving through Chicago during hardcore rush hour traffic. So then the final alternative is to sweep out further onto what's called the Tri-State, which is I-294, or I-355, which is even a bypass even further out. Those are two other options that you can take west of the city, and both of those are toll roads. Now, 294 currently, and as we talk today, you know, you could be watching this video 5 years from now and that construction will be done, but it's under construction right now, and there are occasional slowdowns on 294. There are occasional slowdowns, obviously, when there's construction on I-355, and 355 is significantly further west. So if we're talking about where I'm going in this video, which is up near O'Hare, there has to be significant congestion in Chicago or on 294, the Tri-State, to have to swing all the way out. But typically what I will do is stop somewhere around Valparaiso or in Indiana, Gary, Hammond, somewhere around that area, Birds Harbor, at a truck stop as I'm coming over for a restroom break. Take a look at what the current traffic conditions are, knowing that I have, in good conditions, an hour of driving left. Bring up that Google map, bring up the Illinois traffic conditions website and say, what, you know, unfortunately, all you have is a picture of what the traffic is like at that moment. Knowing that you have an hour left, and typically if an appointment is at 8 or 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, traffic typically will be getting worse. But all you can do is say, well, here's what it looks like right now. I'm going to make my decision based on this. If it's already bad, as you're there at 6 o'clock in the morning, as an example, and it's already bad, then you may say it's worth it to take the Skyway and pay the $25 to $30 toll, and then maybe hopefully things will be better by the time you're leaving and heading back. Again, I can't tell you what the right answer is, because today's answer is going to be different than tomorrow's answer, is going to be different than next Wednesday's answer. All I can do is say, use the tools that are available to you. Google Maps has fantastic traffic information. The states have fantastic traffic information. Know how much the tolls are. Remember, as I mentioned in the video, that Prime does pay 30% of your tolls. So you're not 100% responsible for that $25 to $30. And I say it's $25 to $30 because it depends on what time of day you go across the Skyway. Off-peak hours are less expensive than during peak traffic. I think it's $32, in fact, right now for peak traffic on the Skyway. But you can't make that decision today for what you're going to do tomorrow until you know what traffic is like. And again, all you can do is try. And, you know, 2 days ago, I thought, well, traffic was bad in this location. I took the location that everything was green on Google Maps, and by the time I got there, there was an accident. You know, it was 15 minutes later, and there was already an accident, and things were backed up, and it ended up being about a half an hour delay. There's nothing you can do about that. That's just that. It's one of those. It is what it is. But I wanted to talk about more advanced trip planning. It's a complex thing. It's a living and breathing thing because, like I said, 5 minutes from now, things are going to be different than what they are. And there's only so much that you can do. And this goes back to one of the biggest things in trucking is communicate if there's a change. When you leave, Prime you communicate to Prime, or if you're not with Prime, your trucking company, you have told them you're going to be to a certain location by a certain time. If you get into a traffic slowdown, your trucking company should not consider that your fault because that's beyond your control. Like I said 2 days ago, everything was green. I was set to be somewhere an hour ahead of my appointment time, and all of a sudden I'm in a half an hour traffic delay. Well, if I wait until I'm through that traffic delay and then all of a sudden I ended up actually getting to my appointment 2 minutes prior to the appointment time, if for whatever reason I had been 3 minutes later because that traffic slowdown was a little longer, that's going to be my fault because I didn't pass that information along. But because as soon as I stopped on the highway for this accident, I sent a message to Prime saying, hey, I'm in a slowdown, currently stopped waiting for this traffic accident on I-294, whatever it was, 45 miles from my customer. Prime knew that there was the potential that I would be late. So trip planning does not end once you leave. Trip plan throughout the route. Use all the tools that are available to you and continue to communicate throughout your entire trip that if there's a change, you need to let your company know because they're not in the truck with you. You can't just assume that they know that there's an accident where you're headed. They may know about it, but they may think you got through it before it happened. So it's up to you to pass along the information that you're affected by road conditions, weather, traffic accidents, anything along those lines, flat tire, anything along those lines. It's up to you to pass along. So a little bit on trip planning, a little bit on communicating with your company so that they can pass that along to the customer, so that you don't get to the customer and they say, well, you had a 10 o'clock appointment, why are you here at 10:05? Some customers care, some customers don't. It's the old CYA, cover your rear. You know, again, it's going to be your fault if you don't pass that information along because you're the only one who legitimately knows if you potentially are going to be delayed. Hope you found this information helpful, useful. As always, if you are interested in coming to Prime, link in the description below will take you directly to the application. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, comment on the video or fire me off an email. There's a link in the description as well to an email that you can fire off to me as well. Thanks for watching. Talk to you again next time.